Hello, gentlemen. Welcome back. It's Confidently Wrong. Back in here. Good to see you, Sav. How you been?
I've been doing just dandy.
He's dandy today.
Are your
Okay.
nails shiny?
You got shiny nails?
Oh,
He-
and he
Hit
just
it.
hit it behind his mug.
I got my nails done a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
You
nice.
Drake?
Oh, it's gold. He got the gold on there.
Gold.
Woo!
I had to
All
shine on them.
Is it gold or copper? I can't tell.
You heard me say gold, didn't
Gold,
I? Why
gold,
Why would you follow
All
up
right.
with copper when copper
All right.
never was mentioned?
Okay, it looks a little coppery in the light
Okay,
there.
but you heard me say gold, so why you
Moving on.
He's questioning the validity of your statements.
Can you see the gold a little better?
We might have to put Savon on a 1 minute camera timeout here.
That was the bird he just flashed.
All right, Brian, how you been this weekend?
I'm not bad. Not bad.
Nice. Me and Savon had yesterday off, so that was nice. I think, right, Savon, you had yesterday off, or were you just taking a break?
I was working.
Oh,
I
he
was
was working
all day.
All right, well, I'm gonna blow up your spot.
Working in quotes.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
I finished up in the evening, but all that morning I was working. I got up early. I got up bright and early because I wanted to be able to be done so I could try and run something with the fellers.
Hell yeah. So we got a couple games. We did some pretty good damage out there in Marvel Rivals. So I'm excited. This episode, we're going to talk about one of the shows that I was really, really looking forward to. We talked about Daredevil Born Again a couple of months ago when we were doing our spring Marvel preview, spring-summer Marvel preview. And it was definitely a show that stood out to me as it has a chance to be really entertaining. A little bit of nostalgia, given that they're bringing back most of the main cast from the first couple of seasons, first three seasons, I think, on the Netflix version. And this is kind of that spiritual sequel to that a little bit. It's slightly different, I think, but it's definitely in the same universe, same kind of world and tone that we saw in that first one. A little bit more budget, which is kind of nice. They used that a little bit in some of the special effects.
Wes, do you remember that we reviewed the first half of the season already?
Yeah. I thought we talked about the first 2 episodes.
I'm pretty sure we talked about the first 4.
Okay. So we talked about the first half. Brian is reminding me because whatever, my brain doesn't work. And then we get some nice little turns happening. Twists in the story happening in the second half, which will be nice. All right, so let's start it off. We reached the conclusion. Anything stand out to you in the second half? I guess that's episodes 5 through 9. Sav, what kind of stood out to you?
What stood out is that you could feel a tonal shift, in my opinion, in the last few episodes, and I mean that in a good way, where it really felt like the peak moments of the Netflix Daredevil series, and I mean that in a good way. But yeah, main impression was that they really ramped up the plot. They really got the ball rolling, and made just a lot of things pop off. My opinions about this, I feel like I can dive more to it in one of the later questions about production related stuff. But overall, I enjoyed it. It was genuinely entertaining, and the spectacle of it all kept me very engaged and glued to my seat. And when it's all said and done, isn't that what entertainment TV is all about?
That's what it is. Brian, what stood out to you?
Every time Kingpin says Vanessa. No,
that was a good Kingpin.
I can't stand that dude, bro.
What? You can't stand Kingpin? Come on.
I mean, a good way. In a good way. He's very well put. I'm just
he's
oh
delicious, man. When he's on screen.
I mean,
he hit him with a brick.
The way that he kills a man and then dabs a little napkin on his chin to wipe off the blood, ever so cutesily and daintily. Love it. Love that
blood
Kingpin.
Already on the napkin. I'm like, napkin already.
But yeah, I mean, I do think the tension ramped up in the latter half of the season. Of course, we have a lot of the themes that we talked about in our previous episode of, these parallel character arcs between Kingpin and Daredevil finally coming to a head in the latter half of the season. And so, first half, we talked about how there was very little action. Second half, we got our fair share of it. So, that was exciting to see. And the one thing that really stood out to me though was how much this show feels like a comic book run. It feels like almost the way that the Invincible animated series is, right? That there are a number of plot points that are going along through the course of the season, and you're seeing different villains and you're seeing different challenges for our main hero, with one overarching, plot main villain that is taking the course over the course of the season. And so I feel like we don't get to see a lot of that anymore in TV shows that are, 8 episodes long for a season. They usually seem to be very straightforward. We know we're going from A to B, and it's pretty clear how that progression is going to take place. But in this season of Daredevil, we get some standalone episodes where there's just a single problem happening, but and then we get a couple episodes of White Tiger. We get a couple episodes of Muse. We get
bank episode,
right? Bank heist, and maybe that ties to some of the goons from Kingpin's Empire, and then we get some Bullseye a little bit here and there. But then, of course, there's what Kingpin's doing overall as the mayor. And so I think, to me, it's impressive that the show is able to pull that aspect of it off. That it's just working on so many gears and moving them all forward in interesting, exciting ways. And to me, that is very much in the vein of comic books, right? And very much in the vein of Daredevil specifically. It feels plotted just the same way.
See, I noticed that, but I think that didn't land for me, and I wish it was a little bit more connected across, like things were happening in a way that felt like they did actually like mean something to each other, or they reflected something about these, like the different events or different plot lines were reflecting more about each other than they did. But I could see how you'd like that it was kind of like, hey, this is kind of, we're throwing a bunch of things in the air and we're gonna visit them briefly and keep the wheel moving, basically, is kind of what it felt like.
I think all the plot points, all the different plots are related, right? Because they are there more so to develop the character arcs.
Absolutely.
For Kingpin and Daredevil, right?
Absolutely.
It's sort of less about the specific plot points and more about the development of those characters as a result of what happens in each one of those scenarios.
No, absolutely. This is the same thing that happened with Invincible too, right? Invincible would have all of these side plots that feel irrelevant to the larger Viltrum plot, right? But the real thing isn't about the actual episode plot. It's about how the character Mark being focused on responds to said situation, and that develops his self in a way that when you do get back to the larger plot, you see the relevance. Perfect example of the bank heist episode in Daredevil. It probably feels like a silly, self-contained, what are they doing day in the life episode. And in a way, it is. But also, we're getting a real insight into what's going on in Matt's psyche. He is itching. He wants to get back in the game. He can't stand having these people do these awful things and not get the retribution, even though he wants to try and do it the legal way, right? It starts off with him trying to call the cops and snitch on it, but then he decides, nah, man, actually, I'm going to 180 back into this bank and insert myself into this situation. And, in some ways he was low-key escalating it, but like that feels like it's in a bubble, but really, Matt's in a really wild place mentally right now, and we see it get worse, and it progresses up until the ballroom episode where he jumps in front of an epic bullet for Kingpin. But like, Matt was already on a downward spiral, and it's actually, and I'm kind of agreeing with Brian on this, I like them having those little side things happening because yes, they're all separate events, but they all affect Matt in a way where this is how it's going to affect the bigger plot. And I'm always a fan of that. I'm always a fan of characters being put in situations that aren't relevant immediately to the main plot just to show their thinking, how they are, how they respond to situations. And I don't know, I think it's like, I like Matt cracking a safe and finessing the diamonds. Like, hey, we get to see Matt do some shit that we probably wouldn't normally get to see him flex and do, and get some insight into, what's going on with him. That being said, I wish these seasons were a little bit longer.
Wow.
Even just like an extra 2 episodes to me. Because I'm a fan of those episodes, so I feel like short form storytelling shows that only have 8 episodes don't give you as much room to do that. I'm in the camp of, hey, add an extra 2 episodes, we can have another slice of life episode for a character that lets us develop them, but lets the main plot get some room to breathe too. Because I don't like just a straight linear main plot's the only thing that's going on. I'm not a big fan of that anymore.
He definitely escalated the bank situation. For
that
sure.
whole episode, I was like, Matt, if you don't shut your ass up, oh my God, bro.
You can get all these people killed.
You could have just called the cops and went home. The best part about season 2 is that Heather consistently and rightfully calls out all his self-destructive behavior. I'm like, bruh, she's right. Like, you showing up with bruises, and everybody's like, it was fun to watch, Daredevil crash out again. That's really what we should call this season, because it's just Matt crashing out for like the entire season of just, well, you better hit the blunt because you are tripping.
See, I'm a little bit on the other side. Like, Heather is right, but Heather's also wrong in that Matt has...
Because he's working for the Kingpin?
Matt has this knowledge that he knows that he's got a certain set of skills.
But he lying. It's not his fault. This man lying.
And the city needs that certain set of skills.
You got a girlfriend who care about you, who works in mental health, and your ass showing up with just bruises and checking out, and if you're blind,
they're just not a good fit for each
other
other.
is showing up with bruises and they just being deflective. Like, pimp, you in the wrong, big dog.
Oh, he's in the wrong.
You love how he like distracted her from like noticing the bruises by just like initiating shower sex. Like,
I'm just like, oh my God, is that just gaslighting his girlfriend about his vigilante activities?
Wrong. He's wrong as a boyfriend, but right as a hero.
Yes, but like in that case, maybe you don't need to be a boyfriend. I'm like,
yeah, maybe not.
Like, I'm like, yo, Heather does not deserve this right now, man. You are effing. This is
standout moment. Come after the bullet wound, waking up in the hospital, being like, Karen? Oh my God, bro.
Trouble now.
And then immediately goes back to crashing out.
Yeah.
I need you to know, Kingpin. He's dangerous. So I'm just like, B, you can't just give these big allegations and not say shit about your activities. Like, you better off saying nothing.
Well, he was trying to walk that fine line and failed.
Walking the fine line, he was stomping. That one wasn't walking nothing.
I don't know when it happened, when they revealed that Adam was in the cell somewhere like in a basement or something like that. But this is a spoiler for sure. The fact that in the last, I think, second or third to last episode, Kingpin sort of does like a apology / ultimatum / I don't know, like last ditch effort to get her back, and shows her Adam and is like, this is what I've been doing. And he's kind of like a child, right? He's like showing her like, this is the bad deed I've done. Like, can you forgive me? And then gives her the gun and says like, make a choice. Cause I think you and I are ready to move forward up past this. And she agrees and, executes him.
Murder an innocent man.
Yeah. In the cell. And a man she cared for, right? Like she clearly had feelings for him. But her Machiavellian brain was just like, yeah, he's now a loose end. This goes nowhere good. We just need to eliminate him. Clearly, like, if he showed back up somewhere, people would be like, where were you? How did this happen? Right? Like, so yeah, it's way better that he's just gone now for them. And that moment of her just shooting through the cell or into the cell and, triple tapping him was that was a standout to me. I was like, oh my God, like, yeah, we knew that Vanessa was, was down for the cause, but that was like, oh, you're really, really down. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was a monster in the other seasons too.
Yeah.
Order and
like,
hits.
she's not afraid to get her hands dirty, but like she really gets her hands dirty on this one. So that was a standout to me. It was startling for sure. Like she barely hesitated. I mean, she had a few tears, but there wasn't really a hesitation. It wasn't like, oh no, I can't do it. It was like, I'm doing what's got to be done, and this is what's got to be done right now. So that stood out to me as kind of her cold-bloodedness in that moment. I think you guys mentioned the Heather and Matt scenes. I think that one where she was kind of reacting to the fact that Muse, had taken her hostage and was going to kill her, and she says like, aren't Daredevil and Muse the same? Like that was I thought that was really good writing in terms of like showing that juxtaposition between the two and kind of making Matt confront the fact that like, yeah, in some ways you're the hero and you do good things, but in some ways you're also the same as Muse, and you have to understand. It's like he's forced to have to understand like, wait, how am I actually different than what Muse is doing, right? And
I don't think he wants to confront it though, because his
doesn't.
response was like a little kid, like, no, we're not.
Yeah,
we're different.
And they are, right? I mean, I think in a very real way they're different. One saves lives and one takes lives, right?
Yeah, but if he's always lying and all that, and always, just having to do half secrets and full secrets and half truths, he'll never be able to actually explain himself, and it makes him look even worse.
Yeah. No, I understand that part, but I'm saying like, I don't think you can say that him and Muse are the same, given that his goal when he's a hero is to save lives, to protect people who are less powerful, and Muse's idea is, I'm going to sacrifice innocent people for my art and for whatever, to save the city or whatever he thinks he's doing. So
I actually think that Daredevil doesn't believe that by the end of the season.
He doesn't believe in saving lives?
That's the only reason why he's doing what he's doing. Because in that scene, that confessional in quotes,
at the end with
he's
Karen,
talking to Karen,
yep.
He's talking about the darkness coming in.
Yeah.
And he's talking about the whole mask thing and debating, what was that all really about? And I think he's admitting that part of it is that he wants the darkness, right? Like that he has this desire to tear shit up and break bones and do all of that. So in a way, he's admitting that the superhero thing, the crime fighting thing is just a justification for some of his innermost rages.
Yeah, and we know he has rage issues.
To rage. Yeah,
we know he has rage issues. That's like probably his most defining character trait, right? Is that he's so put together, but he's always has this bubbling rage that he's trying to control. No, 100%, Brian. Like honestly, that was one of Daredevil's biggest character development moments in the entire series for me, of like him really confronting his why and the doing of this, especially because this season in particular has really, I think, better than previous seasons of Daredevil, really dug into the motivations of, hey, if you're a vigilante and you're doing this, why are you doing this? Why is Punisher doing what he do? Why was Hector Ayala doing what he do? Why is his niece interested? Why, the motives become very interesting. And even with Kingpin, like, I feel like why is a big theme of this season. And I like that Matt had he had a moment of self-reflection and revelation that Kingpin did not by the end of the season. And I do like what that means of whatever we're going to get from Matt in the future. But I'm curious to see, okay, he's had this come to Jesus signs, Kathleen. He's had this come to Jesus moment. What is that going to look like for his how he carries himself in future seasons? Does it mean that he's just out of the darkness now and trying to work with people publicly like we kind of saw at the end? Do they expand on that? I don't know, but I'm very excited for what I think is a much needed evolution in his character.
Yeah, I think Kingpin's self-realization was that I'm the effing mayor. I can grab power.
I can do whatever the hell I want.
This is the same shit. Just now it's kind of legal.
Same shit, different toilet. And he was like, oh, yeah.
Nice. So now that the season's over, like all the way, what were your favorite characters? Who were your favorite characters, I guess, in the show? I found myself wanting more of Karen to be in the picture. Like when we saw her in the first episode and then we again saw her in this last episode, it was like, damn, like she and Daredevil and Punisher like really make it all work. Like when they're together in scenes, it's just like really good. I don't know, maybe it's just because they have a long history of being able to play those characters that they really feel like they're living in those characters. I think at more than in any other moment when those three are on screen, I'm like really engaged and feeling like this feels like there's a lot of energy on screen, and I don't know how to like quantify that or anything like that, but they stood out to me as people I wanted to see more of, and it didn't feel like forced or it didn't feel like, oh, they're like trying to just fit them in. And so I kind of found myself like, we could talk about like how they're, we talked about their production last time, but how they kind of switched it up mid production and changed writers and directors and all of that. But the fact that Karen wasn't in it for the whole season, she came back in this last episode, and I was like, man, like I wish she was in it more. That it really made it work, and there could have been just things between him and Heather and him and Karen that would have like kind of amped up that tension a little bit more and made things more tricky. I don't know. I would have
the love
that.
triangle.
Yeah, maybe, but it didn't.
We already had that.
It didn't have to be that, but I think that when she's on screen, it
maybe
makes
a poly
better.
relationship. Maybe that'd be better.
That's where we're going next. Yeah, for sure. Matt,
Stay woke.
Sorry, Wes.
Stay woke.
Yeah, we're
Daredevil.
gonna disagree on that. I'm glad that they brought in Karen to kind of like in the finale towards the end to bring things and wrap things up. But I like that she was absent from the rest of the story. Otherwise, because.
But then I just felt like then you don't need her. Like then you didn't have to have her.
I don't think she was needed for that part of the story. I think she was called in when there was a crisis and she was needed, and it worked because that was also where, at least in my opinion, that's the point where Matt also has really effed things up with Heather too, and that's really deteriorated beyond. I would have been genuinely upset if we got a love triangle. So I'm glad that Karen was reintroduced at a point in the story when Heather is kind of, things are falling apart. That being said, talking about characters who stood, I can take the easy answer and talk about how, Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock and all that was dope. And like, that's a given. I already talked about how I liked the character development that he got. Heather was my unexpected character who I really enjoyed this season. I appreciated this character.
You like her in that white dress, right?
I like that everything about her actual like characters, motivations, and career really significantly added to the story and felt very intentional. I like that her character is a mental health professional in this world of people with the mask, and what does that mean about, being your true self? Like that entire idea of one's true self and the facade, and us seeing that amongst Frank, who is probably the most self-actualized character of everybody. And then, even though he's cracked in his own regard, right? But
he's so cracked.
but still, he's like, but he knows that he's cracked and there's not any delusions about it, right? So yeah. Meanwhile, you got Muse and Kingpin and Matt, who are all just having these existential "who am I?" and even Hector balancing that. All that to say, I liked the themes of her bringing that up and the background of her being the therapist and that coming up and being relevant to all the characters. Her being Kingpin and Vanessa's therapist and kind of getting caught up in that a little bit. I like that ultimately she ends up being set up as an antagonist for Matt down the line. But how she landed there
stupid.
Feels so. I thought it was natural and I loved it.
I don't know how I feel about it.
Stupid.
I think from her perspective, everything that she's doing makes sense from a person who is not a superpowered ninja or criminal underworld badass. Like, I liked Heather's role in this story as an every person. And I get why someone like her would just be like, yo, all these masked people is tripping. She's a mental health professional. She already has that informed. And then between Muse, Daredevil, people just beating shit up at night and all that, like, it's not wild for someone to just be like, yeah, I'm not really rocking with any of that.
But that's what I'm saying is she would know that Kingpin's not
she has no reason to think that.
What?
Because they leave a lot of information out of their sessions together, which they showed before.
Yeah, but she's gonna know.
She doesn't know about the lover in the basement.
But she
Wes,
knows.
You're judging the character.
She's a good mental health professional. She's gonna know he's been deceiving, that he's hiding something, that Vanessa was hiding things. Like, she knows they haven't been completely honest with her about what they're talking about. She knows he's not trustworthy.
But maybe she doesn't have a reason to know that it's evil.
Wes, you're judging this
No,
character
it
off
doesn't
of
matter. But
knowledge
she
that
wouldn't have
you.
joined. She wouldn't have joined his cabinet or whatever. This like
Wes,
special
Wes, you hear yourself right now?
position. Yeah,
You're
no, she wasn't
judging
do
this
it.
character off of information that only you, the viewer, would have. There's nothing from we've seen in Heather's perspective at any point in this show that would indicate that she has any idea that Fisk is a criminal underworld kingpin.
Is she a
That's not
competent
public-
mental health professional or not?
Wes, how does being a mental health professional mean you know who's a criminal and who isn't?
It doesn't mean
That
that she
don't make
knows
a
she's a
lick of
criminal,
damn
but
sense.
she's gonna know that he's deceptive, that he's holding things back.
Wes,
and
somebody lying about
and-
their marriage has nothing to
and-
do with lying about murdering
and-
people. That's a very big. That is a significant leap.
And it would be there would be no ethical situation in which she could be his therapist and join his cabinet.
I
She
mean,
just wouldn't do it.
Well, she was already relieved the duty of therapist.
I know, but she wouldn't do it.
so what? Well, Wes, you just.
I know, but
I know, but actually, no. Point is, Wes, you right now are judging her for info that only the viewer has.
I'm not
It's been
judging her.
established-
I'm judging
been
the
es-
fact that I know she like if you set this
You
character
know,
up
you know
to
Heather.
be.
You know Heather.
No, if you're setting right, and what the writers did, I think they set her up to be this like really good mental health professional. She's clearly good at her job. She's well respected. Yada yada yada. She's written books that seem like normal. She's able to try and help people, and she's like, talk to Matt about like, hey, these are the things going on, and they haven't been in therapy at all. And she's been like, these are the things I know because of like the way that like you are and your mood, you're talking, whatever. So it's like we get a sense through her actions that she's really good at her job, right? So if you're really good at your job, you're not going to join the mayor's whatever office of mental health, things and be appointed there when
I think
you
that's
know-
exactly why she would take.
you
the
Yeah,
know-
I'm like, Wes, I don't think what you. Yeah, am I tri-
that she
am I
knows
tripping
she's
right
not.
now, Brian?
She knows she's not in a great place, right? She knows she's still affected by the incident with Muse, right, and being like held captive. She knows that Kingpin is not. I don't know what you would call it. He's not. He's not always on the up and up. He's clearly like someone who's a little bit dangerous.
That's the part where we don't know. We don't know that, bro.
She
Yeah,
asked.
him
She
being-
asked Vanessa if she's safe.
Yeah, but then Vanessa immediately shut that shit down.
Yeah. Okay. And then at the
It's
end,
not like
it's
Vanessa
like,
was blinking twice or doing Morse
yeah,
code.
yeah,
like,
no, I know, but I don't think that feeling of like I don't know about this situation goes away.
I
And
think
then
you-
at the very end, at the very end, Vanessa goes, "We solved it." Like she knows they didn't solve it through like actual positive like conversation because they never did it while they were with her.
Yeah, but that's not her marriage, though. That has nothing to do with her taking the mental health job, which, think about so here's the other side of that,
But
right?
she has to know
From
something's
her
wrong with that situation.
Yeah, but not
That's what
enough
I'm
to say, yeah, but I think that's completely irrelevant from I got kidnapped by a mass vigilante serial killer dude who's been going nuts. This character, Daredevil, was also involved. She doesn't know that he saved her life, but she know that maybe he was involved, things come up, whatever. And you have
She knows he helped
Bullseye,
save his life. He was fighting against him.
No,
She
but she
doesn't know-
makes
she
the
doesn't-
argument that he was not there just to save her life.
Yeah,
That
and
he
Matt-
was there to fight. That's the
Yeah.
argument that she makes.
Yeah, and keep in mind that's something that Matt kind of soft admits to at the end, like the whole darkness thing. He admits that his motivations were a little bit of self-indulgent, not just altruistic. But between Muse, between Daredevil, between Frank Castle, between Bullseye getting out and shooting up the thing and shooting her boyfriend, in my mind, she already mentioned that she's writing her book about the the ideology behind people who have the mask on. I would say for her, it makes perfect sense to be the advisor of mental health if the city is going nuts because of things related to mass vigilantes. Now, we know it's Kingpin doing false flag setup shit. We know that much, but she doesn't have that information. Again, the reason Kingpin is mayor in the first place is because the public doesn't see him the way that we, the viewer, sees him. And that's clearly a driving point in the show. Like, that's the reason Matt's breaking down with Heather half the season. Is just like, man, the public persona ain't what y'all know. And that's why I enjoyed Heather's character, because I think it gave a good insight into how a regular person who's not plugged into all the crime fighting vigilante stuff could find someone like Fisk to be appealing. Because from her eyes, mass people are running around acting a fool. She got kidnapped, almost killed, shot by another vigilante. She had encounters with at least 3 nuts vigilantes in just those little span of time. And she writing a book about it. Damn right she gonna say, man, look, let me take this mental health job so we could get this shit together. The city is nuts. which broke my heart because I like her character and I hate to see her falling into Fisk's hands, but I like that they gave us a character to do that. And in my opinion, the motives of how that happens suck to see play out, but makes perfect sense.
But it's like she has no, and even if you didn't see all the things we saw as the audience, it's like they just took away all her critical thinking skills of like being a person who can evaluate a politician. Like, I don't think you have to be super plugged in to realize like Wilson Fisk is someone who's just amassing power, who's like instituting martial law, who's like saying, I'm the one who's going to promise that we save this city. Like, it's like Donald Trump, right? When Donald Trump says, I'm the one who can save us, and all these people go, yeah, we could save us, Donald Trump. You know, it's like,
but you're acting like those people don't exist.
Yeah, but Trump.
Yeah, but like, would it be the lady with like 2 degrees and an actual ability to like evaluate mental health, and she's met him in person several times? Like, no, like.
Have you seen the people that work for Donald Trump? J.D. Vance went to Harvard, didn't he? Or Yale or some shit?
Lots of
what
educated people.
Wes?
Lots of educated people with advanced degrees, doctorates, and all of that are still avid support. Like, that doesn't determine your immediate political
interested
ideology.
In power. That's not her gig.
She got a promotion. She got an appointment to be the head of mental health or something for the city. Like, maybe she is
but is that what
she
was interested in at all? But is that what she was interested in? Was being
books and goes on tour.
Wes, I feel like you're projecting your morals onto this character and are ignoring.
Yeah, a little bit. I agree, but I also think she's
a little bit okay.
No, but she hasn't been characterized that way as someone who wants to move up, someone who wants to like.
She's trying to write her second book.
Yeah, but that
bestseller.
And you can frame it as she wants to help too. You can frame it as her wanting to help. In her mind, again, between Muse, Daredevil, and Bullseye, she had all these crazy encounters with mass vigilantes. It makes perfect sense for her to be like, hey, me being in this position for mental health will actually let me be able to address and stop future Muses or Bullseyes from happening. Like, that makes, even if you don't want to go the power grabbing route, you can just go if she's genuinely altruistic, this is how a person who cares can get manipulated to working for bad people. Like, which I think that's exactly what happened, but that's what makes it compelling, right? Which, again, that's why I'm excited for season 2. They've clearly set up that because of Kingpin's manipulations or extortion or a mix of all of that, good people are also within his administration. And I think a big theme for next season is going to be what happens when good people are quiet, and what can you do to make them be able to stand up and say something? Maybe she ends up realizing Kingpin's a monster. I think she will, but right now she's just a client she worked for who has good points about vigilantes being out of control. And it's like, hey, that tracks. Like,
I don't think you're giving her character enough credit.
Anyway, can I just say that you guys are both missing the best character of the season, which was clearly Ms. Marvel's dad working at the bank? Come on,
buddy. Yeah. No, that was
actually not him.
Why would you do
The Punisher, man. The Punisher was so good
in
really this season. Like, every time he showed up.
We needed more
limited. I think it was just right because it made each moment that he does show up really pop. Like mid-season, he gets that great argument with Matt Murdock about him lying to himself, and you got to confront this and say his name and stuff like that. And then he shows up, in the darkest hour to protect Matt. And again, it's just like dropping these great one-liners and stuff. And, like anytime I get an injury in the future, I'm definitely just going to drink some coffee because there's nothing that a good cup of coffee can't fix. Right. And then you got the moment where he's confronting the special task force, basically Kingpin's Gestapo
wannabes.
Right? And they they have the Punisher logos on their chest, and
but like shitty versions of it, right?
Like, be one of us, we admire you. And he's like, you clowns, you don't know my pain. And like he's like laughing at them, and I just love that.
I wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire.
Oh, that was a great line. And he he's delivering it with so much like style, pain, like feeling,
disbelief.
And then it's got the added level of, the real life thing is that there are some right-wing ass militias out there who style themselves after the Punisher. And yeah, so like the Punisher, we get the actual Marvel Punisher saying like, y'all are clowns. Like you do not know what you're doing, and there's no reason why you should try to imitate what I'm doing. So give it up for the Punisher. I thought he was fantastic.
Absolutely.
And if you guys didn't already know, Jon Bernthal, who plays him, is actually writing a one-shot special for the Punisher that they're going to start filming.
Oh, that's gonna be great.
One shot meaning one take, or like just like a
No,
one
no, no,
episode
no,
thing.
just like Werewolf by Night.
Okay.
A little
So like
standalone.
a standalone, like hour long or maybe 90-minute.
Is there an estimate about when that's supposed to come out?
I do not know.
Okay.
But Jon Bernthal is writing it, which is kind of interesting. He's taking a page out of Sylvester Stallone's playbook and writing his own macho hero character.
I mean, I think at this point he understands.
Past,
I think at this point he understands Punisher well enough to write that character. Now, whether he can put everything around him, like, we'll see.
Yeah, he is Punisher, right?
Yeah.
Just like Hugh Jackman is Wolverine. Like, you can't cast anybody else at this point.
You'll be playing this character till you're 60. I could see that gray-haired Punisher. That could work. All right. I did love Punisher. I wanted more of him. Is there anything about, we talked about the production kind of, I don't know if you want to call it snafu, but the change up that they made while they were making this because of the writer's strike and because of feedback from Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio. They switched gears, they changed head writers, showrunners, all of that. Did anything in the second half of the series stand out to you as really working? You're like, oh man, I'm so glad it seems like they made some changes that were going to work. Or was it like, oh man, that change up kind of really, took you out of it in some way? Savon, was there anything that stood out for you? If it's not, that's okay. We can move on.
No, I mean, I think you could, I was saying before in the earlier questions, I think you could feel a shift in the tone and writing towards the end. I think it leaned a little bit more into like the people really getting effed up and on-screen violence and not really shying away. Not to say that the early episodes didn't, but this one was it felt more like the Netflix series in that regard. That's what I meant. Even the dialogue of characters arguing and swearing and cursing more, and maybe some of that is just that the stakes and the tension had raised, but it felt just a lot grittier and tense and darker. And I really liked that. But I don't know, as far as the production stuff, and this is maybe more of a big picture thing with the season, there's definitely moments when you can see, this is where they pivoted. This is where they made some some writing changes or some story pacing changes. Like I said, I think you feel it most with the Muse storyline things and how the Muse stuff went. I think it's clear a lot of the Hector Muse stuff was more what they originally had. And then what they kind of did on the back end with the bring back Punisher, Karen, the city falling apart, that felt like it'd be some of the more newer things they put together. So you can, so see if you can kind of feel that. But, and I was always giving the show grace about this in the first place. I actually really give them props for being able to see something, realize, I don't know if this is it, do major shakeups, and actually, I think, stick the landing fairly well, considering the things that they had working against them. It's not easy to scrap that much of stuff, create that stuff, but still keep a lot of it too and have it all flow and look really good cohesively. Like I was reading about some of the production changes, and some of the changes were small, but things like what was Hector Ayala's niece's name?
Oh, I forget her name.
But like the niece being kidnapped by Muse instead of it being like a random person, and certain things involving like Karen and Punisher being back and them maybe not being as pivotal in the ending part. But I think they did a good job of adapting the changes, making it flow well and smooth, and it gives me a lot of hype for the next season. But really props to them for correcting the ship when they realized, hey, this ain't it. They pulled the Denver Nuggets fire the GM, fire the clean house. But
we'll see if that works out.
But they actually managed to not just punt on the show. They actually managed to correct, I think, what were the concerns. So shout out to them, because I think the show only has if this is how the show looks with them having stuff working against them and production stuff, imagine if they have a more cohesive vision moving forward for the next season. I'm like, that gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, but I think you also have to evaluate them on this season, right? You can't just be like, well, it makes me excited for next season when they do put it all together. It's like, well, yeah, but this season they left a few things like I think wanting, and not that it's like terrible or anything like that.
Yeah,
just,
but
I think like you said, it felt like disjointed, right? That was part of it, and then I think in some ways like the Bullseye stuff was like, I don't know, it kind of landed in this weird place of it was important but not that important, and I wish they sort of just committed to making Bullseye like actually more important in some way, instead of doing the stuff where it's like, oh, it turns blue when he shows up and he's the one that shot them, and I don't know, it's just like they didn't do enough I think with him, and he's a fun actor. I love that guy. I forget what his name is. He's in he is in that Heart of Dixie show from a long time ago that I told you about, and he was also in in like a legal drama or a legal comedy drama called All Rise a few years ago. But
What are these shows that you're making up right now?
I know they're not super high prestige TV. They're not prestige TV. But I like him and I think he does a good job. All right. Anyways,
no, the flaws
Brian,
are there, but I don't think they're innate
Yeah.
flaws. I don't think these are innate flaws that are like
What do you mean? These are innate flaws. It was in the show.
No, what I'm saying is that not all flaws in a show are created equal. Some
Okay.
flaws
You're
are so
exhausting
big.
Savon, Wes.
Some flaws. No,
This seems
some
like an innate flaw. They messed up
No.
the production.
No, some
Okay.
flaws are so baked in that there is no correcting it because
Okay.
it's so baked into the bones of the show that you can't fix it.
Okay.
This was it's not looking good. We pivoted, but if you pivot and you're moving in a better direction, to me, that's a sign that you'll continue to move in that better direction because you learn what didn't work well, which was them realizing, hey, this whole soft reboot shit isn't good. Let's pull the plug on this because it's not going to be good. And that means, okay, cool. They've learned from things that don't work. That is a good sign moving forward. And the show got better for me. It got better and progressed very well. And you know me, I'm a big how you kind of stick the landing. I thought they stuck the landing in a way of, okay, cool. They started out a little wobbly, but they finished strong, which to me is better than starting strong and finish wobbly.
All right.
So
Brian.
I wasn't against the first few episodes of the season. I actually really liked the courtroom drama stuff that was going on with White Tiger and a lot of these Matt Murdock as lawyer instead of Matt Murdock as Daredevil moments that they were building up. And so like the shift in tone, I'm not really sure if I can actually put it on the change of creative direction, or if it's really just, as you said, the stakes of the overall plot started to rise, and of course the intensity on screen is going to move in tandem with that. So I don't know. I don't know how much of a change it was, and we also don't really know if like the original season or series was supposed to play out in a similar fashion either. But you know, all of that being said, I still think like the show finished on pretty high note, right? And did really well, hit a lot of the things that we were hoping a Daredevil show would hit. And at the same time gave us all the kind of shades and nuances by dipping into various side plots, subplots throughout the season. You know, I thought all of that was like very interesting, and skillfully done for the most part. Though, you know, Wes, I kind of agree with you on some, and I think maybe even Savon agrees with you at some point. But you know, you saying like it could be a longer season, and that's why some of these subplots kind of happen and then they move on. Like, yeah, that was, you know, like Heather getting, you know, brutally slashed in the arm, and then we're just moving on to the next thing right after, right? Like, you know, all that stuff could have been, you know, elongated a little bit in a couple more. That's like
really traumatic to be like kidnapped and held hostage and almost killed. Like,
yeah, another Muse episode I think would have been deserved, right? Like
one more Muse and one
Daredevil
more
is already in his lair. He did no detective work to arrive there. He's just like, well, she said 61st Street, so now I'm at 61st Street.
And that's just a little bit.
Here he is.
He looked up pictures online.
But that's a pacing thing, right? Like that's just a matter of, hey, there's only so much show, so you got to figure out what are we going to show and what are we going gonna tell.
Yeah,
I think
they
that's
clearly wanted to show the confrontation.
Yeah, and it's like, cool, an extra 30 minutes or an extra episode or two, you can lean into detective, which, granted, we got a lot of detective Matt. I don't want to pretend like we didn't get any shortage of Matt using his powers in creative ways, but that might have been a really pivotal moment to show him doing it because the stakes are so high and all that. But an extra episode or two, right? A little bit more Hector, maybe a little bit more of the follow-up with the niece, maybe a little bit more Muse, make that 2 episodes total, and suddenly plot lines that were good but maybe kind of ended a little quicker than you like can last a little longer, stick a little longer. You have a few more character dialogue moments, and I think that raises the floor of the show significantly. You don't need the 18 episodes like Netflix. That was way too much.
That was too much? I think we needed
that
more
shit was a
more
slog.
Fisk and Vanessa. I think that's I think I would have needed I wanted more of that.
I think more
their
of any
scenes were like so high tension. I was like, oh my god.
They needed more for Kristen.
Is he going to kill her? Like, what is gonna happen here?
No, they needed more for Kristen. I felt like she was supposed to be the spiritual successor to Foggy, but they didn't give her enough to do.
Did not.
And Foggy
they kept sidelining her.
Yeah, Foggy at least had the friendship background to be able to hold it up, but she was doing Foggy's role without the background friendship and charm that made it work. So she just feels like another coworker who Matt's just being a dick to. And it sucks because I like Kristen. She's a cool character. It's just they don't give her anything to do because ultimately
hard to know
Matt's
though.
not gonna...
They didn't give her anything to do.
No, but like I like the actress. I like what she does. Like it wasn't like this character's mid or it's a bad performance. It's just y'all gotta give her something to do. She's rightfully calling out Matt for all his bullshit. Yeah, but
nothing happens.
They don't want to let her in or really like step things up. Even in the hospital, it's like, hey, after this settles down, we gotta have a serious talk. I'm like, man, y'all need to have that shit not like now, but like, this is y'all moment for y'all to really drive home this character. And
they were like, now we got other things we got to talk about.
Yeah, like, come on, toss the lob to her, let her catch the lob. She can act. Like, set her up, man. Like, what y'all doing?
All right. So I definitely think some bumpy moments there. I agree with those.
But it's wild because Fisk administration gets that. Like the people fit all of like Fisk goon, Sheila,
like even Sheila, right?
Dude,
like gets her moments.
I never thought I was gonna be such a Sheila fan.
His young protege too.
And
has some great moments.
Yeah, like I felt like they did a good job of developing Fisk's entourage, which I didn't think I'd be interested in his cabinet of like the young dude who hopefully maybe he'll see his figure, realize his figure's a little more effed up than he realized, and Sheila just being a snake. I really was rocking with her. They made them more interesting than Matt's entourage of like Cherry and Kristen, who I felt like Cherry was cool, but that was a shortcoming of like a little more episode and you could really
he's
Matt's
just a gopher.
Yeah, because Matt's support system was cool on paper, just not enough lines, and Fisk was cool on paper and they actually gave them shit to work with. Even the intern dude who I don't really like, but he's still interesting to watch.
Yeah, he's interesting.
Him trying to strong arm the city council was really something.
That was good.
Where he's like leaning into his wannabe Fisk, and just using that bully pulpit. And I think the show gives them a lot of screen time and develops those characters.
Bought it
for satire reasons, right? They're just leading into the times that we're in. Even if they wrote this pre 2025 or whatever, it happened in the first Trump administration, and this is just a matter of art reflecting the real world.
Facts.
I mean,
you don't believe it,
but you wouldn't even
believe it. It's happening.
Yeah, you wouldn't even need like a Trump to do that, right? I mean, this has been a ongoing problem in corruption in politics for a long time, and anytime you've had Kingpin in there, he's had ways to influence like corrupt people, right, in the government in New York. All right, last couple of questions. So I think there's a lot that's like set up for the future for a season 2, and they said he will return into season 2. Daredevil will return into season 2. We've got a couple of different things that are sort of hanging out there, right? Like Fisk and Vanessa are more united than ever somehow, which like honestly feel like that part was like maybe a little like rushed, but whatever. Karen is a little bit back in the picture. Punisher is in prison, and then in the mid-credit scene at the very end, breaks the guard's arm because he stuck his arm out to shake his hand or something, because whatever, I don't know, but broke his arm. I'm sure he's gonna take his keys and get out. I don't know what else is kind of hanging. Oh, we got Hector Ayala's daughter or niece potentially being someone who could show up later. Maybe not in this show. Might end up being part of like the Young Avengers like situation that they're kind of in the ether with who's heading that up? Was it Kamala Khan is heading that up and Bullseye or Hawkeye, not Bullseye, Hawkeye, the Kate Bishop Hawkeye.
Kamala, Kate Bishop, some of the other youngins, yeah.
So they could be a thing. Probably Cassie from Ant-Man is going to be in there. So maybe she'll show up in that rather than in Daredevil again. So there's a lot of things going on. Was there anything? Obviously, Heather joining Kingpin's cabinet of some sort, and then I guess the cops sort of now just being totally on board with Fisk and having no one in the police department that wants to stand up to Fisk now that he what did he do to his head? He like
broke it,
crushed it, and then like ripped his jaw off or something. I mean, that
he
was
did
gnarly.
The walls of Jericho.
That was insane. Brian, is there something that you're looking forward to, or that you're like, wow, I definitely want them to focus on the story moving forward?
Well, the thing that I was curious about was Karen convincing Matt that he needs an army, right? And so the last shot we get of him is him dressed as Daredevil, walking into Josie's bar, and seeing a few cops, seeing Cherry, Josie, Karen, whatever. That is that's first
Team
formation
Daredevil.
of Team Daredevil, of the Daredevil army, if you will. So it seems like they're recruiting, good cops. I was hoping that we would actually see some other folks in there, like other street level heroes.
Spider-Man?
Why do they have to name the cop that drove the commissioner, Luke? Like, just to throw us off. There's also that swordsman guy who's running around, who is the stepfather of Kate Bishop.
He's in prison.
I'm sort of curious, like, what it means, right? So they're trying to say, okay, Kingpin has martial law enacted in New York City, has complete control over the city, has his own army with the task force as that. And so now we're going to raise our own army to rise up against him. What exactly does that mean? Is the big question. How does somebody like Daredevil go up against suddenly the Kingpin, who is an institution at this point, who has ultimate control? Like, what exactly does that look like? I'm not really sure. And who does he recruit to be part of that endeavor? And hopefully there's some good people. Hopefully we see some fun faces again. I'm hoping.
Sav.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm really excited. I guess I really enjoyed the ending of the seeds they planted, Bullseye being out there. My biggest thing that I took away from what I think is going to happen in the later season in terms of tone and based on what we saw in the last one is that I think this was very intentional, like filmmaking. Tell me if y'all disagree. No, you will. But they did a good job of making a lot of the folks who enabled Fisk maybe have a brief moment of clarity of realizing, oh, I might have made a mistake in what I've done. I think we saw it with Sheila. Obviously, she was regretful of everything she did.
I don't know about anybody else.
I think
some of those cops were a little.
Well, we established.
skeptical.
Yeah, well, remember that cop Luke. I think they established that he's not on board with any of this.
How?
My interpretation was that he said, "Look, the commissioner was like, I haven't seen you since a kid. Oh, fresh ink. Yeah, I'm just trying to survive." I think we've gotten to the point now where because Fisk has such total control over the police now it's kind of like you get down with it's like a forced gang membership thing is how I interpret it, of like, oh, if you're going to be a cop on the force, you got to be with it. And what's the best way to create a culture where people have to get with it? You tattoo them so that even if you're not really with it, you got to be inked up. I took it as like, yo, this is actual real deal gang culture now. Hey, you want to be a cop? Cool. You don't got to agree with all the awful shit they're doing or like Fisk, but you're going to get with the program, and that includes getting tatted up. And that same cop even had a disgusted look on his face when Kingpin killed the commissioner. So the way I see it is, he literally said, "I'm just trying to survive."
Yeah.
But I think that's an important line because it's them establishing that not everybody is okay with this, but people are intimidated and scared because of what Kingpin has managed to do. I think even like maybe I'm reading too much into it. I even thought there was a moment where Buck had a look on his face of like, oh boy, this doesn't maybe seem so good. I think Young Boy, the protege dude, I think he had a moment on his face of like, oh shit, this is kind of this is a little bit more intense than what I thought.
Oh, I missed that. I thought he was just like all into it. Like he was at the desk at the end with his little ring and his shirt unbuttoned. He was feeling himself.
Yeah, and I think there was a part after that though where he's talking to everyone else. I can't remember if he's there or not. I need to rewatch that scene. But I think they made a very important point to show lots of people did look disgusted and not okay with it, to really drive home that Kingpin's creating this environment of fear and terror where you don't want to speak up, which is intentional. That's really, really dope. It drives home how awful he is. All that to say, I think the theme of next season is going to be about getting good people who are, discontent to actually stand up. Matt probably realizes you can't do this alone in the shadows. It's got to be a group effort. You got to get people to rise up, and maybe that's what the army bit looks like, right? He's talking to the clean cops. We got characters like Swordsman and the Ayala girl out there. We even see Bullseye kind of be set up in like I think a maybe somewhat sympathetic way, because ultimately, again, we all
got played by Vanessa.
Yeah, and also besides him getting played by Vanessa and Kingpin trying to get him killed in prison, like they both played him, right? It's worth noting that Bullseye's kind of he's very much a victim in this series. He's still responsible for his actions, but he is very much a man who has severe mental health issues, who was manipulated by Kingpin, taken advantage of. Kingpin's the one who put him on that path to begin with. I think there's a lot of redemption arcs for characters coming around the corner, and I think they're setting it up for Kingpin to have won, but this culture of terror is going to turn everybody around him against him. Because some folks who are just along, because even that young dude, the protege, he's kind of annoying, but he doesn't come off as evil or malicious. He's just someone who he literally said, I just want to be along for the ride. He's a climber. He's not a killer. And I think people are going to realize, yo, man, Kingpin's an asshole. We can't be.
But I could see him also going further, right? And realizing like, oh, this is the way to power. I want to have power. And so like, yeah. If I see that the way to get there is like any means necessary, and if that means like a few dead bodies got to be there, then I could see him going that direction. I mean, not that he will for sure, but I can see him going that direction.
And what I find interesting is that the difference between him and some of the other folks is that he's not a criminal, he's not a killer, he's not just some monster like Kingpin was from a kid. And I think that'll be the moment where characters realize we're not monsters like this dude. But I think that's a good setup for whatever the next season's gonna be, because it's gonna be some stressful shit. It's a dark time, 8:00 curfew. Like, it's going. I don't care if you with the Fisk administration, you be like 8:00 curfew,
especially in New York. That's really early.
Yeah,
that's dinner
people
time.
would riot after that announcement.
And
that's dinner time.
You're trying to mess with my nightlife?
Yeah, and if we're gonna just do the art imitates life thing, the same thing happened with the first Trump administration when he won in 2016. A lot of folks were just along for the ride because they wanted to advance their careers, or they just didn't realize how much of a bad actor he was. And then people, when they were actually in the room with him alone for a while, was like,
they're like, "Oh God,
shit."
Yeah,
it's like, "Oh shit."
But now that we got second Trump administration,
hates him. That's why all his OGs hate him. That's why Mike Pence don't like him. And he was in a room alone with this dude. Was like, "Oh shit."
And that's why he took away all of their security details so that one day they can be shot.
Yeah.
And so with this second Trump administration, we'll see how much the writers dig into that for material, for and chart the paths of their characters, because definitely, using the office to bully people, to intimidate, to have, your own Gestapo, which is basically ICE, doing all of that kind of malfeasance. And people still being on that side, right? That and of course we have Daredevil saying like, well, it's about time people like rise up against it. We'll kind of see how much of that the show adopts to play out these storylines.
All right, final ratings. Where do you stand in it? I'm gonna do mine first because I feel like going to be the most confidently wrong here. I have 2 scores on this one. So
what?
From like a moment to moment basis, I really enjoyed this show. There was never a moment where I was like, I'm bored, or like, I don't get what's going on. Like, everything made sense. Everything was like with it. I was like, cool. I enjoyed it. Like, the character interactions were great. Writing was pretty good. Action was superb. Loved me some Frank Castle. So like 4.5 out of 5, maybe a 5 out of 5 from like a moment to moment. And then like every time I step back from it and think about like what did I think about the show overall, I'm like, it was fine. It was like 3.5. There were some moments where it's like, why is this story happening and this story happening, and like what happened to Foggy and Karen, and like they were so important and now they're just like not in the show, and like why is Kristen here, and like all this stuff was going on, and I don't know. It was just sort of like not everything felt as connected as like I really would like a really big show, like a big production show to be. And maybe that's an unfair expectation given that it's like a comic book show and things like that. But it just felt like there wasn't any one big mistake. It just felt like a lot of small mistakes that made it not feel quite so like cohesive. And I don't know what I wish for. I just wish maybe it was like slightly different. And so like I wouldn't be telling people like you have to watch this season. I'm not telling, like, I don't think I would go back and rewatch this season. Like, enough happened that I'm like, okay, I remember the like main beats, and I'll watch the recap when season 2 comes out so that I can remind myself what like happened. But um, I don't think the show is like, oh man, this is the pantheon of shows, and even gets to me like above a 4 like overall. So I don't know why that is. Like, I don't know. I don't understand how in my brain the show can be really good while I'm watching it like in the moment, and then overall be not very good. But that's kind of where I landed on this one, and that I feel like I'm hating on the show, and I enjoyed it. I don't know, but it that's kind of where I landed. Sav, I feel like you're gonna disagree with the most, so we'll go with you first. Where did you land on this show?
It was an entertaining show. I overall enjoyed it. The things that could be critiques,
I enjoyed it.
the things that could be critiques didn't really take away from the show. Like the biggest issue with the show is that they had to scrap a lot of stuff and rewrite a lot of the show, but that didn't meaningfully stop my enjoyment of it. And again, I actually gave them grace for it, of like, cool, this is y'all correcting what would have been something that was really bad. All right, then I can like, I'll factor that into like my rating of the show. But really, like I said, they just stuck the landing for me. I don't know. I didn't have any real complaint. My biggest complaint was that I think some of the choreography wasn't super great, and I'm not always a big stickler about choreo, but there were a few scenes I'm like, yeah, this wasn't the best. But I also, again, gave him grace of like the show had to do a bunch of reshoots and all that stuff. So that's not even like a budget thing. That's just a time constraint. There's only so many hours in the day. You can't make the people download the choreo engine and just do it perfectly if you only got X hours in the day. So like that didn't really hurt the show for me in the ways of what was important to me. The important beats they hit of like, I got a cool Matt Murdock story that wasn't based around him beating people up as Daredevil, and they kept me engaged with developing him as a character along with Kingpin and painting a cool picture of New York. Like
they did a great job of juxtaposing those two throughout the show, right? And how one was trying to be clean but was really dirty, and one was trying to be, well, actually they're both trying to be like clean versions of themselves, but underneath had a ton of rage. And the way that it came out, I think, was really good. And I think that they deserve a lot of props for like showing that over and over and over again in new ways.
They were always intercutting their scenes together.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So they're playing off of each other on screen, actually, even if they're not in the same scene.
Yeah. Ultimately, I wanted a good Matt Murdock Daredevil type story, because I think Matt Murdock actually might be one of the few secret identities that's arguably more interesting than the actual hero identity. Daredevil himself is pretty straightforward. Matt Murdock's struggle is frankly more interesting, and I like that the show gave us that. I wanted a Matt Murdock Kingpin story. I got it and was thoroughly interested in both their arcs throughout. So I got what I wanted. I give the show a 9 out of 10.
All right.
Wow. High praise.
It's a good show. Like I could nitpick about the stuff I didn't like, but it wasn't something that made me not enjoy. It's not like I watched the show at home, finished it, and was like, oh, the first thing I wanted to talk about was the thing I didn't like. I was caught up on the shit I liked, and then afterwards I'm like, okay, I guess I could nitpick this, but that's just if I'm choosing to nitpick. You can do that for anything.
Great. What's the Meta Brian score?
I'm naturally in between you guys.
Oh my
Of
lord!
course.
Switzerland over here. Switzer Brian.
Enlightened centrist.
It was, like I totally agree with Wes. Like moments, not. I don't mean totally. I mean I agree with him on the point about individual moments being really entertaining and strong. Like the dialogue throughout is really strong. There are a lot of great performances. Also, shout out to the ambitious cinematography in a lot of the episodes. They do some really cool things in terms of long tracking shots, like looking through people, like in the ballroom scene. They go from these two people, then to this other set of people, and then to another set of people, all in one through line. Like that kind of stuff I just really appreciate, especially because you don't normally see that kind of thing in a Marvel product, right? In most Marvel movies and shows kind of look exactly the same, but I felt like with Daredevil, they were really, they were trying to do something interesting and trying to do things a little bit differently. So shout out to them for doing that.
Colors were also different, right? It's much more muted in this one compared to most Marvel shows.
Yeah. It's not like high key lighting. It's not brightly lit. It's it's darker. It's more saturated. And yeah, it just had a cool vibe.
Story. Damn right.
It felt like Daredevil. And so that's the other thing, right? Like even if I agree with Wes that okay, like maybe the whole season's not taught, right? And there's some grown moments where you're like, oh, really? Is that what's gonna happen in this? But we got to think of this in context of the MCU, and for a lot of the more recent products that have been coming out, I think the consensus is that like okay, some things are feeling a little off, some things are feeling like heavy retreads. They're just giving us formula over and over and over, and kind of phoning it in. And I think, especially compared to the other MCU TV shows, like Daredevil Born Again kind of bubbles to the top. It's still like one of the best things they've put out, and definitely one of the best things they put out in recent years, I think. So
you
all of that is
Agatha? You guys loved Agatha.
All of that is good. I think Agatha is phenomenal.
Okay.
I actually think Agatha might be a better show than this.
Their shows have been historically good, but this is one of the higher points of their shows. And Brian, to like really drive home your point, because this has come up consistently when we've talked MCU, Marvel, anything over the years, is that much like real comic books, Marvel stories shine best when they are allowed to have their own creative vision to tell the story that this tone of this character is. Let lighthearted characters have lighthearted tone. Let serious characters have serious tone. It doesn't have to be uniform. And to your point, Brian, when you see shows like this one, or even movies, I know we don't all like it, but like even like Doctor Strange 2, you see the unique stamp of that director's creative brand on it. And even if it's not the best show or movie, having that creative stamp and brand elevates it in a way that makes it still feel like something that was artfully and thoughtfully put together, even if it's not your favorite show.
Exactly.
Daredevil absolutely nailed that and
makes it stand out from the pack, and that's
it's a trend,
that's important. That's
all the
important.
best Marvel shows. That's the biggest thing, is that you look at it and it feels distinct. Even for how much I didn't like Loki for a lot of reasons, it is so artistically distinct that means you have people who are going to be drawn to it rather than something generic that doesn't really draw anybody in, right?
I loved it. Yeah.
But now the thing is, we also got to compare this show to Penguin. How sad for Daredevil to follow Penguin's tail, which was really great.
That works
right?
as TAIL and TALE.
That's why I said it.
Good job.
Thank you. And so I don't remember exactly what score I gave Penguin, maybe like an 85 or something like that. So I got to give Daredevil like a 79, I think, or 78 or something like that. It's not, it's definitely not at the height that Penguin was at, but it still stands tall on its own.
I love it. All right, friends, that's where we landed. A lot of highs, some mixed bags, some wishing for different things, but overall it seems like we all thought it was like pretty enjoyable. So take with that what you will. Let us know what you thought about it. You can DM us on Instagram or leave us a comment when we post the show. We're excited to have you here. Next show we're gonna be doing a what we're loving, and we'll probably talk about the Superman like 4-minute scene that they released, which just came out. I don't know, maybe about a week and a half ago. So go watch that, and then be ready for our next show. Friends, we're out of here. See you later. Goodbye. @confidently_pod.